I remember it like it was yesterday, though it happened many years ago in the village of Kanyaga where the rains had abandoned us. For months we watched the skies, hoping to see the dark, heavy clouds that meant salvation. But the skies stayed clear, and the earth cracked under the weight of the sun. Even the rivers, which we thought would never run dry, became shallow trickles. Cattle grew weak, crops failed, and the laughter of children turned to cries of hunger. It was during this time that the whispers began. Mama Adera still has the gourd. Mama Adera was an old woman who lived at the edge of the village, near the forest where the spirits were said to dwell. She was known for her wisdom, and some said she had a touch of the supernatural. As children, we were afraid of her. She always walked with a staff carved with strange symbols, and her piercing eyes seemed to look straight through you. The gourd people spoke of was no ordinary gourd. It was said to be a gift from the rain spirits, passed down through generations in Mama Adera's family. The elders told stories of how, long ago, during another terrible drought, the gourd had saved the village. When shaken, it would summon rain, but the spirit's blessing came with rules. The gourd could only be used in times of true need, and it demanded respect. If misused, the consequences would be dire. One evening, as the sun set behind the baobab tree in the village square, the council of elders gathered. The chief, Mzi Otieno, sat at the center of the circle, his face lined with worry. Everyone who could still walk came to listen, even though hunger made us weak. "The rains have failed us," Mzi Otieno began, his voice heavy. "Our children are hungry, our animals are dying, and our land is parched. Mama Adera has the gourd that can save us. We must ask her to use it." The crowd murmured in agreement, but there was hesitation too. Everyone knew Mama Adera was protective of the gourd, and some feared her power. But hunger silenced fear, and the council decided to send a delegation to her home the next morning. I was there when they arrived at her compound. Mama Adera was sitting outside her hut, weaving a basket, her thin fingers moving with surprising speed for someone her age. When she saw the delegation, Mzi Otieno, the village elders, and a few young men carrying gifts of millet and honey, she stopped her work and looked up. "I know why you've come," she said before anyone could speak. Her voice was strong, like the rustle of dry leaves in the wind. "You want the gourd?" "Yes, Mama," Mzi Otieno replied, bowing his head. "The village is suffering. We need the rain." Mama Adera stood slowly, leaning on her staff. "The gourd is not a toy," she said. "It is not something to be used lightly. The spirits do not give without taking. Are you ready to pay the price?" The elders exchanged uneasy glances, but Mzi Otieno nodded. "We will pay whatever it takes." Mama Adera studied him for a long moment, then turned and disappeared into her hut. When she emerged, she was holding the gourd. It was simple in appearance, made from a dried calabash, but it seemed to glow faintly as if it held sunlight within. She cradled it like a child. "The spirits demand respect," she said. "If we call the rain without purpose, they will punish us. And once the gourd is shaken, the rains may come fiercely. Are you prepared for what follows?" "We are prepared," Mzi Otieno said, though his voice wavered. Mama Adera nodded. "We will perform the ceremony at the riverbed tonight. Gather the village." That night, under a sky filled with stars, we gathered at the dry riverbed. Mama Adera stood in the center, the gourd in her hands. She chanted in a language I didn't understand, her voice rising and falling like the wind through the trees. The elders joined in, clapping rhythmically. The air felt heavy, as if the spirits themselves were watching. Finally, Mama Adera raised the gourd above her head and shook it. The sound it made was strange, like thunder muffled by the earth. She shook it again, and the wind began to blow, gentle at first, then stronger. "Go home," she shouted. "The spirits are coming." We ran back to our huts, and before we reached them, the first drops of rain began to fall. By morning, it was as if the heavens had opened. The rain was relentless, filling the rivers and soaking the fields. People danced in the downpour, their faces turned to the sky, but the rain did not stop. Days turned into weeks, and the village began to flood. Crops were washed away, homes collapsed, and the cattle drowned. The blessing had become a curse. Desperate, the elders returned to Mama Adera. "The rains are destroying us," Mzee Otieno said. "What can we do?" Mama Adera shook her head sadly. "I warned you," she said. "The spirits do not give without taking. You must make an offering to appease them." "What kind of offering?" the chief asked. Mama Adera's eyes were distant. "Something precious, something irreplaceable." The village gathered again to decide what to offer. Some suggested cattle, others proposed grain, but Mama Adera shook her head. "The spirits do not want your possessions. They want a life." The villagers were horrified, but they knew they had no choice. In the end, it was Mzee Otieno who stepped forward. "I am the chief," he said. "I will give myself for my people." The next day, under a grey sky, Mzee Otieno walked to the river, where Mama Adera waited with the gourd. The village followed in silence, their heads bowed. Mama Adera performed the ritual, and Mzee Otieno stepped into the water. As the river swallowed him, the rain began to slow. By the time his body disappeared beneath the surface, the sun was breaking through the clouds. The village mourned Mzee Otieno, but the rains brought life back to the land. The fields grew green again, and the rivers teemed with fish. Mama Adera returned the gourd to her hut, where it remains to this day, waiting for the next time the spirits are called upon. I still think of Mzee Otieno's sacrifice and the lesson we learned. The spirits give, but they also take. And the gourd that holds the sky is not to be taken lightly.